act as though it was great and say, Connie, you're wonderful. Question. Man, you're incredible. And then, right. Yeah, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Just, okay, whenever you are ready.
Yeah.
Hey. Oh, I love that. That's so good. Okay. Hey there, welcome back to High Strangeness. I'm Connie Willis. If you'd like to give us a call and talk today, we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-STRANGE is the number, 1-800-STRANGE. Also, the website is highstrangeness.com. We always have some really neat pictures for you. And I know throughout the show we're going to be posting up some as we speak. We don't want you to see them beforehand because we're going to kind of all see them together at the same time. My guest today is Bishop James Long. I've been looking forward to meeting him. You've probably seen him on a few shows along the way that deal with ghosts. At least that's where I've seen him. And then I come to find out that he's in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's my hometown. That's where we are right now, actually broadcasting. He was raised Roman Catholic. He attended a Roman Catholic grade school, and it was during that time while he was attending kindergarten that he knew that he had a calling to serve as a priest. This was in kindergarten, little smart little kid. He had a little white little collar at that point that his mom made for him. Anyway, his mother had asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he had pointed to the priest and said, I want to do what he does. Absolutely wonderful story. Here he is, Bishop James Long.
Well, hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic.
I love to hear that story. In kindergarten, you actually knew?
I did, and I knew at a very early age. I didn't know why. I knew that I was so called to the priesthood. I fell in love with it, and I went to the Roman Catholic Seminary and studied for the priesthood in the seminary for 6 years.
And where's that?
Well, I went to St. Meinrad, and then of course Loyola University, and then St. Mary of the Lake in Mundelein, Illinois. So it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So you knew. I knew I always wanted to be in radio and TV before I could remember a thought. So
wow, that's
good. It's better than those kids that are in college still going for 8 years, going, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, right? So,
right.
So for the most part, well, you know what? Your church is a little different than other Catholic churches. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Of course, I'm the presiding archbishop for the United States Old Catholic Church. And while in the seminary, we had academic and spiritual formation. And I was going through, theological complications and difficulties, and my theological beliefs were not in unison with the Roman Catholic Church, such as women ordination.
Oh, okay.
And other issues as well. And so I instead of being a hypocrite, I decided to be true to my faith and my calling. And I decided to join the Old Catholic Church because that was the right thing to do. And so, therefore, I joined the Old Catholic Church, and I was ordained a deacon and priest and elevated to the episcopacy within the Old Catholic Church. And here I am today.
Does the other church look at you guys as very liberal? How do they see you?
Well, it depends. It depends on who you speak to. Now, the Roman canon law clearly states that any church that has valid apostolic succession is considered validly Catholic. And we have apostolic succession. I can show my apostolic succession to Peter. And so, therefore, the apostolic succession is there. We celebrate all 7 sacraments. We believe that Christ is the center of the Eucharist, et cetera, et cetera. But with the Old Catholic Church, there are some Old Catholics that are liberal, and then there are some Old Catholics that are ultra-conservative. And I think that really, when you go too liberal and too conservative, it really is unhealthy for both. And so I think you have to have a balance, because you become you exclude those people who are too far to the left or too far to the right.
And you miss all the good meat in the middle. That's
right.
Where it's all happening, right?
That's right.
You're safe staying on either end. There's nothing going on.
It really is simple. We just believe in it's simple. We just believe in love and compassion. It really is that easy. We accept everyone as who they are, not as who we want them to be.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
It's that easy.
Are you married?
I am not.
Oh, no, okay, ladies. Here's one of those guys we've been looking for all our lives.
we do allow priests to be married.
Mm-hmm.
So we are different in that aspect.
Well, you backed that up quick when I called out the ladies, didn't you? You notice that, girls? He's looking now. Well, that's fantastic. There's a man you can trust without a doubt. I know that mostly you deal with a lot of demon work and possessions. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that really quickly before we go into the high strangeness area.
Just as I knew I wanted to be A priest, even at 5. I also knew that I wanted to study demonology. So at the age of 9, I began to study books on demons.
Was it just a thought, or did you see something as a child, or?
It's just a desire, burning desire to learn more and more. And so I picked up books and I began to study anything that I could. I actually went to the library because at that time the internet and that kind of stuff.
Right,
believe
right.
it or not.
Microfiche and all that kind of stuff, right?
You actually went to the library and got a library card.
That was horrible.
Yes. And I read as much as I just was called to that, because being a demonologist is a calling. It is a ministry. And so I knew that I was called to serve in this ministry. And so therefore, as the years progressed, I learned more and more as I could about demonology and theological implications, philosophical implications, etc. And then, of course, my love for demonology grew. And as I progressed even more, I studied not only the theological implications, but also the psychological and the legal implications of possessions and exorcisms.
Legal?
Oh, the legal consequences are extreme. For example, if you were possessed, I couldn't restrain you without having your permission to do so.
Oh.
But yet, the issue again is and it goes also back of having a waiver that you sign. But if I don't have a psychological evaluation performed on you, and yet you have a psychological disorder, that waiver is null and void.
Right.
And so it's so extreme as far as the consequences and the details before an exorcism is performed. And I performed 24 exorcisms.
All real? All totally 100% exorcisms?
Yeah, the exorcisms that I performed are 100% real.
Have you gone to some where it's like, no, this isn't
No,
real?
the exorcisms that I have performed, when I get involved with a case, there is absolute no doubt.
No question. Okay,
Yeah.
right.
There's no question at all.
And they have to go through an evaluation.
Psychological evaluation. I need to know all their medical records. I need to know everything about the past. I need to speak to the psychiatrists who administered the test. I need to know the medication that the person is on. And even then, even after having all this information and we've completely ruled out psychological issues, I am still doing tests when I get on scene to determine if the person truly is possessed.
And those tests are?
Well, that I can't divulge.
Oh, okay. Is that why could you not divulge that?
Well, because that information really is trained exorcists should know that.
Excellent.
Because only an exorcist knows what they're doing. But the demonic will also know.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking if you're doing that because the demonic wouldn't know, it would know. It knows
most
you're
certainly,
coming.
and it will point it out. Wow. So in other words, I am doing things that no one else knows, but the demonic will know and mimic and mock it.
I got you.
And
so then you know.
Therefore, yes. But again,
Excellent.
Psychological evaluations. A person who with a psychological or psychological issue would not levitate. A person who has a psychological disorder will not know your personal sins. A person who has a psychological disorder does not know dead languages, such as Aramaic. So if I'm speaking the Our Father in Aramaic, starting out the Abun, the Mashmaya, and I'm speaking in Aramaic,
Right.
Our Father, it is speaking backwards to me in mockery.
Wow.
And
wow.
so, of course, that's obviously not a psychological issue.
Right. And I was actually taught that, how to speak it in Aramaic, but I can't even remember it. So if it started coming out of me and backwards, you know that, something's wrong with me. Wow. So have you actually seen levitation
Yes.
with people?
Yes.
Is it very much like what most people see with exorcism and the Linda Blair? I mean, were
No,
they close to that at all in any way?
Actually, the Linda Blair is not so much. Actually, the exorcism of Emily Rose, or actually her name was Anneliese Michel. She was a young German girl, and I have the case files on Anneliese Michel.
Because it was a real story.
It based on a real story,
Right.
That's correct. And they were pretty close to what actually had occurred to her. It was quite terrible. Quite terrible what she endured. And so the things that she had had happened to her, there were witnesses, multiple witnesses that actually had seen. So as far as the levitation did occur, but it's not as extreme, obviously, as Hollywood would portray.
Well, I appreciate your work because it is real, it is out there, and I think the more people know that and know the truth, it just seems that everybody wants to push the truth in a closet and not deal with it. And I just think the truth makes us all see clearer everywhere.
Well, I consider myself, I have advanced degrees. I don't charge for my services ever. I don't charge for an exorcism. I don't charge for a house blessing.
Oh, the phones are ringing like crazy now.
It's like hello.
And he doesn't sleep.
And the thing is I don't charge for these services. If I had any doubt at all that these things that didn't exist, believe me, I would do other things with my time. But the things that I have seen and witnessed, there is no doubt in my mind at all, none whatsoever, that these things really do occur.
Mm-hmm. I believe you too. I've seen some stuff myself, so I'll be calling you at one point with these people. Well, let's go into the high strangeness. Let me give that number again if you would like to talk to Bishop James Long and ask him a question. Maybe things are going on with you, but we're really not talking about what we just spoke about. I just wanted to give you a background and so you can listen to him as well. Tonight, of course, it's high strangeness, and what we're talking about is anything related to high strangeness. The number to call is 1-800-STRANGE, 1-800-STRANGE. And again, we're going to be posting up some pictures, too, during the show at highstrangeness.com. All right, let's go into the area that I was very much giving you a call about. When I found out that he was in Louisville, I called him up to see if he would actually talk about ETs and aliens with me at any point, and he was very excited to do it. And I was very excited to hear that, because I want to tell you, I'm a Christian. I grew up Presbyterian and Baptist is kind of my education, and whenever I talk about this type of world, because I'm very interested in it, people just think, well, you must be the devil, because why are you doing this? You know, this is not of God. And so when you said you would talk about it, I was really excited to hear the perspective of God and the Bible and a man of God. So this is excellent. So tell me about the perspective from you about ETs and aliens.
Well, you know, of course, I have a whole thing of notes, and I'm definitely a note guy, especially when I do. But off notes, you know, I've always had an interest in UFOs and extraterrestrials and learning about cases and what people have claimed to have seen and witnessed. And quite honestly, some of the cases that I have read, some of the people who have said, look, this is what I saw, this is what I clearly touched, come from very credible sources.
Yeah.
And we can't argue that. I mean, people have from law enforcement agencies, officers, or doctors and teachers, and I mean, people from all walks of life have reported seeing a lot of the same things, and so therefore there's something going on, and which amazes me.
Do many people come to you about that? Because I'm sure they would come to you definitely about demons and ghosts. There's something in my house, but they do come to you about this too?
I've actually had several phone calls in which people have told me that they are impregnated. They've been impregnated with alien beings.
We've done a whole session on abductees, and exactly right.
I don't know how to handle that, but I just offer a prayer and say it's going to be okay.
Well, do us a favor. Take them to the local hospital and get a sonogram and all that, so we can have some proof.
That's it.
And if they have 3 fingers, yes, we've got some proof.
We got some proof. There are some people who are really legitimate, and not to make fun or poke fun of those people who really truly believe that they have been abducted, because there are some people who really legitimately believe that they have been abducted and living through terrible nightmares on a daily basis. And that's, my heart goes out to those people, because they really truly believe this. And so therefore, I can't say that they haven't, because I don't know. In philosophy, there's a term. In logic, there's a term called argumentum ad ignorantium, and that's argument from ignorance. There's no proof that aliens exist, therefore they don't. Well, that's a fallacy in logic. Just because we currently have no hardcore proof, that doesn't mean that they are non-existent. Just because we have no current hardcore proof. And some people would actually argue that we do have hardcore proof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So again, it goes back to the credibility issue.
Well, we have that every day, and just murders or people cheating or whatever, because they've been able to cover their booties. Just because you're good at covering your own booty doesn't mean that it didn't happen. You didn't leave any, marks. So
sure.
Right. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, the thing with me is, I always like when I deal with when I talk about aliens. One thing that I have to go immediately back to is the theological issue, and of course the philosophical issue. So, and these are some of my notes that I actually jotted down when I thought about the show. And so here are some things that really kind of struck me when you're dealing with aliens and the theological implications. So how do they fit in with God's plan of redemption?
Right.
Because Romans 8:20 verses 8, chapter 8, 20-22 makes it very clear that the entirety of creation suffers under the bondage of corruption, and therefore we can conclude on a theological level that somehow they suffer the effects of sin. Now, so the question remains, how do they fit in with God's plan of redemption? Or perhaps Romans 8 is wrong.
Translated incorrectly?
Well, I mean, when it clearly says Romans 8, when it says that the entirety of all creation suffers under the bondage of corruption of sin, well, when it says all of creation, does that also mean them as well? Or is it just specifically talking about us here on earth?
And are you saying that they do exist?
As far as aliens?
Yes.
Well, I'm saying if they exist, then my question, my problem would be, what about the redemption of sin?
Okay, so you're not saying no way, they do not exist. I'm telling you this from this verse here. So okay, I just want to make that clear first.
I guess on a theological issue, I'm saying, well, if they exist,
okay,
how then do they fit in the redemption of sin? Because we know that we are redeemed through sin through the way of the cross. That is, so therefore, the way of the cross is our redemption to obviously heaven. Okay, so as Christians, we believe this.
Totally.
Therefore, are they redeemed by the cross as well? And do they have the knowledge of the redemption of the cross?
Right.
Is that truly universal across all galaxies, all Milky Ways? Do they have that knowledge? Do they know that one event actually took place here on earth? Because Christ would not be re-crucified over and over and over in different, can you imagine?
He'd be worn out. Oh my goodness, he'd have all these last suppers. Well, you know, the funny thing is, so many people, and I just heard this even last night on a show, I think it was ancient, some sort of documentary. And it's funny how people will say, well, ETs aren't coming here because we're not that special. You know, I don't like hearing that because, you know, we are special. Whether they're coming here or not, we're still very special. And maybe we're the most special, and maybe that is why they're coming here. I mean, we don't know, but maybe because of what you might be going to, maybe that is why we're special, because it did happen here, and maybe
Sure.
Is that
that's a brilliant point. That's a brilliant point, because if in fact that the cross only occurred on earth, which theologians would only argue it's a one-time event. It would not ever happen again and again and again and again, because theologians would argue that the cross, the crucifixion, happened once and only once. And therefore, that makes us very special indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so
I see that.
The question is if aliens do exist, do they have the knowledge of the cross? And if they have the knowledge of the cross, then they have the knowledge of why the cross occurred. So if they know that the cross occurred, they know that redemption occurred, so they know that they have that redemption as well. So obviously there would be a real good reason as to why they would want to come visit Earth.
Exactly.
Why Earth?
Yeah.
Why those people?
You could even argue the point that they are called to come here, and maybe they're thinking it's one thing, and maybe it's our message, our serving, to give them the message.
True.
Right? Because we're supposed to do that with our neighbors and everyone else, correct? So
Absolutely.
Maybe that's the neighbor of the galaxy.
But see, and it begs another problem. But why did God choose Earth? I mean, why did God choose to become incarnate, live our life, die our death, ultimately defeat sin and death by the way of the cross? Our galaxy alone has over 100 billion stars that could support life. Now, in our universe, there are over 100 billion galaxies. And this is according to Sarah Seeger, PhD. She's a professor of planetary science at MIT. So if we know that there's 100 billion galaxies in our universe, why Earth?
Exactly.
Why us?
That brings up a really good point. Maybe that is the reason. I like that. Well, then you got to look at, do they have souls? My mom, she grew up Catholic, she was all excited that I was going to talk with you today. And she said, ask him this. If we're all made in the image of God, what are these bug-like looking creatures that everybody sees? How are they made in the image of God?
The same way that animals are made in the image of God. I would say no, but they're all creatures of God. And so therefore they all have souls. Just as dogs and animals certainly have souls. But the question is do they have rational souls? For example, the cogito, I think, therefore I am, the concept of self. You have the concept of self. You know who you are. You know the identity of self. Now the question is can an animal identify? Do they have the concept of self? Do they know when my animal, my for example, Fuzzy, my Schnauzer, does he have an identity of self? Does he know when he looks in the mirror that's Fuzzy? Mm-hmm. Well, philosophers would say no. Rationalists would say no. When animals look in mirrors, they bark because they think they're seeing another dog. They don't have the concept that reflection is actually them. When humans look in the mirror, they say, well, that's me. That's it, because we have a concept of self. Mm-hmm. Now, so I would certainly say that do they have rational souls? I don't know.
Right.
If they, again, it goes back to, it begs the question of who are they? What are they? Do they follow a moral code? Here's what I'm interested in. And if you don't mind, can I read this for a second?
Sure. Do you have enough light?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So the next question arises about ethical and moral beliefs.
Okay.
See, I'm a nerd at heart. So
are you? I was going to say that, but I didn't want to. No.
This is so exciting. This is like, ooh, fun.
No, I love this. I'm so happy. I thought you were going to tell me, no, you didn't want to do it, and I was a freak, and, the devil was in me, and you wanted to come exercise, me. So, great.
This is good time. This is really good times.
Perfect.
So here's the question that I have for you.
Okay.
Do aliens follow the natural law, which is do good, avoid evil? So all created beings with higher intelligence follow a moral code. However, even within the human species, we see that many who do not. For example, we have rapists, we have murderers, and other people who do terrible things. We know this. Therefore, I pose this scenario to you and all your listeners. The aliens who abduct human beings without our consent are behaving unethically. The abduction obviously negates free will, and it directly violates our rights as human beings. Therefore, abducting human beings without our consent is an evil act because it goes against our free will. We cannot argue that all aliens abduct human beings, but we can argue that some have. Therefore, the few that have do not respect the whole or do not represent the whole of the whole alien species, just as the rapists and murderers of our society do not represent the whole of the human species. So I pose this question. Are these aliens who abduct human beings and do terrible things against our free will comparable to the rapists and murderers of our society? But more importantly, are they the rapists and murderers of their society? So I have a theory that those aliens who abduct human beings against our free will are suffering from a theory that I just put together because there's no theory out there. And I like this. It's alien disassociation theory. So they suffer from this lack of moral code that take us up, do terrible things to human beings, negate our free will, and actually act upon terrible impulses.
If you would like to comment on that, and I'm sure you're dying to, the number is 1-800-STRANGE. I'm looking forward to this myself. 1-800-STRANGE. You're listening to High Strangeness Radio. This is Connie Willis. We'll be right back with James Long, Bishop James Long. Okay, we are back with High Strangeness, and got the numbers ringing off the wall. It's interesting what you just asked because we from the abductees, they say there's contactees, abductees, and experiencers. Contactees have some sort of level of contact. Abductees, are being taken up without their will, where experiencers are pretty much more open to it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of interesting because you had mentioned they're doing this, against our will.
Sure.
And according to a lot of people that have studied this, they believe that there's treaties between the ETs and humans that have said, okay, we'll take your technology, or maybe the aliens are saying, we'll allow you to live right now or we'll give you technology if you allow us to have some people to test some cattle. And apparently they've kind of given that treaty and given that up without our individual yes. So it's interesting that you say that because maybe somebody in the government or black government, as people say, have given permission to take a few humans along the way and then give us this great new energy source that you have. So you touched on a lot of things with what you said. I absolutely love that. What do you call that again?
The alien disassociation theory.
Oh my, that's incredible. I like that. But the most interesting thing of all is, are they the rapists? Are they the bad guys from the other planet?
I think so. Well, if in fact they're abducting people against their free will and doing terrible things to them, yes. Because it goes against our free will. Now, if someone freely says, "Look, abduct me, do what you're going to do to me. I want you to do this," that's different. But if someone takes you from the privacy of your home and do terrible things against your free will, then most certainly, I think that is an evil, unethical act.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that perhaps maybe those aliens that participate in this activity do not represent the alien society as a whole. Perhaps maybe they are the minority within the majority.
And some people, their theory is that these are the scientists from another planet. They want to colonize here, and the only way to colonize here is to make hybrids so they can live on this planet. So they may think, hey, we're spearheading this new pioneer world for our people, so they may think they're doing a good thing by doing this, but doesn't mean it's good for us.
Sure.
Wow. We could talk about this all night.
We could, very, very easily.
I love that. That's we need to put that in the books. I liked that definition in that title. That's great. Well, what is the proof in the Bible? What is any type of proof that you would see?
Now you mentioned the word proof. You're going to get us in trouble now.
Yeah, okay. Evidence,
so you're
possibility.
You're going to get some right-wing people knocking on our door here now.
Oh, they're knocking.
They're going to knock on our door and say, "What's wrong with you?" Well, there are those people who will actually say that in 2 Kings, verse 11, says that the chariots of fire separated Elijah from the earth, and Elijah's spirit, and it was taken away by chariots of fire and never seen again by humankind. For some, this is a clear case of alien abduction. Now, theologians would argue, no, this was not alien aircraft. This was God taking Elijah up. He was a prophet, etc. But other people say, now, wait a minute. He describes these chariots, these wheels of fire in the sky. Perhaps he was describing a saucer.
Exactly. That's exactly what you always hear.
So it's one of those things. You have to scratch your head and say, I don't know.
Right.
So who knows? Now, we do see, of course, in ancient writings and times that there are sources of UFOs. They're found in Old Sumerian texts. Ancient Egyptians, they're referred to by the ancients as chariots of God, which is very interesting because in Scripture it talks about an Elijah chariots of fire. And it's pretty see the connection.
Right.
Now, the ancient Mayans are believed to have received mathematical secrets from the gods from the sky, and these stories have been repeated over time across cultures, which is really interesting. Across cultures in which did not have those communications, they can't pick up the phones and say, "Hey, dude, guess what we heard." I mean, across cultures and boundaries that they couldn't communicate with one another, which is really fascinating. Now, this is really interesting, and this goes a theological debate. But Moses was believed to be guided by a mysterious light. He led the people out of Israel, out of Egypt. And ufologists believe that it was an alien aircraft that led them out of slavery. Now, the belief is that the aliens' jet propulsion system parted the Red Sea, and the jet moved when the Pharaoh's army came in after them, causing the Red Sea, of course, then to swallow them all up. And, of course, it talks about the pillar of cloud was above them for 40 years. And this, thankfully, it was there because if it wasn't, for 40 years in the desert, they had this pillar of cloud that was protecting them from the sun beating down upon them. So many people actually say that was, and of course it was a light illuminating in the darkness, which of course they say that it was actually a flying saucer.
Right.
So again, people read into this thinking that,
Yep. And it's all about, there's so many riddles, in the Bible. It's representations and symbols.
Sure.
We all interpret it different ways, and in different ways at different times of our life, too.
Absolutely. And there's more as well. But it's, even Ezekiel 1:15-16, it speaks, Ezekiel says, he speaks about a metallic object that is a flying object, and it's descending before him, but later description speaks about the angels and their wings. So he actually talks about this metallic object that is actually flying and descending before him, and these creatures that step out of this, whatever it is that's stepping out of this object. So again, was he speaking of these UFOs or aliens? We don't know.
What do the theologians believe?
They were angels from God.
And what's the metallic thing?
Oh, well, it was, don't know.
Because when it comes to angels, I would never think there'd be a metallic something with them unless it's a harp, and I would think that would be wood.
Yes, yes.
They just have wings. So, yeah, and there's pictures, right? There's very famous pictures that have these little alien UFOs. There's no little aliens, but they have UFOs.
Yeah, I brought some paintings for you so you can take a look at. This is really interesting. This is actually, the first one here is a cave painting, and of course it's dated 10,000 BC. It's in Italy. It appears to depict two beings in protective suits holding, what you can clearly see, I mean, they almost look like they're floating in space.
They do. They look like they even have little space helmets on, don't they?
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is very fascinating.
And we're going to post these right now on highstrangeness.com, so go ahead and we're going to be posting them as he talks about them, so you won't move ahead.
Of course,
no cheating.
In the Ukraine, in 4000 BC, we see another one.
This guy right here?
Yeah.
Wow. And it looks like they have helmets, little space suits on.
Of course, and this goes against, people who actually, ancient aliens who perhaps maybe visited us a long time ago. And this, of course, these are rock engravings, and you can read the paragraph here below, and it actually talks about how one of the aircraft or spacecraft actually crashed. And it even talks about how you can even see how one of them was actually being repaired. And of course, and now this is just, and these are more secular, if you would, and not religious. But there are secular, there are religious, which are pretty fascinating. Let me see if I can find more religious. This is really interesting, and this is a disc-shaped object that's shining beams of light down on John the Baptist and Jesus. And this is a picture here. You can clearly see here some type of object, disc object, that's shining down.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, there's a disc object here, and here is, of course, the crucifixion. And again, you'll be posting that. And here's some pictures here where it looks like there's some type of spacecraft flying away, obviously from underneath the beams of the cross.
And he's talking about right now, it's the crucifixion. Jesus is up on the cross, and there's ships going off on both sides underneath his arms in the background. And these were painted. How long ago?
Well, this was in the 17th century here.
Okay.
This was the cross, the cross of Christ, and of course, all this is of course 1710. Now, this picture here, this is painted by Pasalo Uccello, and this is in 1460. And here we see a disc shape right here.
Absolutely amazing. Again, go to highstrangeness.com. You'll see the pictures that we're looking at that Bishop James Long brought in for us, talking about UFOs and aliens and how they relate through the eyes of God.
This picture here, of course, is again a picture of the crucifixion, and this is actually in a monastery. And if you notice, these two pictures here are a little further away from the beams of the cross. You have a picture here and a picture here, and if you blow them up, you clearly see some type of image.
Right.
It's on the inside.
Now, are these the angels people spoke of? I mean, have they been visiting? And just a long time ago, people said, well, we'll call them angels. They just didn't call them aliens, and now we call them aliens.
You know, there are some theorists who actually believe that, in fact, the authors believed that there were aliens or other beings that actually had visited, and they actually imprinted those type of images onto the painting on purpose. There are some believe that actually that these actually represent the angels or angelic natures or angelic beings, or these are their images of angelic beings. We simply don't know.
Right.
But it does make you kind of think. Now you have small people in what it clearly appears to be spaceships.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. That is definitely a spaceship.
And then of course, this of course is the picture of the Madonna with Saint Giovanni, and again, over her shoulder appears to be some type of spaceship.
Has anybody that's disputed ET life in the theological world, has anybody ever looked at these pictures and said, oh, it was a splotch or something? What do they say?
A lot of times they say it was just, it was the Holy Spirit, or
The Holy Spirit is a metallic disc. See, I knew it.
Or it was, it was an angel. It was the imagery of an angel, of what the artist depicted of what an angel would look like, or perhaps it was just the interpretation.
That's sad, though. I mean, that's sad to say. That's what an angel would look like. No, you can't even. It has to have wings and white and big. Gee.
But it's pretty fascinating. I mean,
it's incredible. There's also a lot of theories that we were genetically engineered and brought down here, and where they say some guy had said, this was a long time ago, I'm going to have to find the book because people have borrowed it from me and I've never gotten it back, where it was called The Face of God, or a guy was walking out somewhere and a disc comes down and he says, I am the face of God. He said, it was our people that created you guys, and we're basically God. Now, let's say the first, if it's possible, even if all that's possible, I mean, we can do that ourselves. We create ourselves in test tubes. We do all sorts of things, but and we only know who knows what they're really doing. Our own species is really doing, because we don't know till about 20 years later what's going on, really, especially all the little top secret stuff we don't know about. But what if Jesus was the first hybrid, where he comes down, he was he was Mother Mary, and it was from above. I mean, I have to throw this out because this is one that's been spoken of.
Okay.
So maybe if the seed was planted, as abductees say, into a mother that never did it the other way. I've never spoken about sex with a priest. I guess the people that do, there's a wall between you, right? But if that did, I mean, that is an actual possibility, right? And then when he's born, he is of what is God to the creators of us, if that is possible. And I'm just throwing this out. I have no clue. And then he has all these special abilities that they also say the aliens have. Healing and knowing what they're thinking of and talking to the Father. I mean, it almost can even fit. What do you think about that?
I would say no.
You couldn't wait.
Yes, I would say.
He's like, shut up, Connie.
I would say because if that's the case, we're in deep trouble. Because if in fact that Christ is equal to that of a quote unquote alien, then that alien cannot redeem us. It is not equal to creation that can redeem us. It's only God that can redeem us.
And what if they come down and they say, you know what, we wrote that book to try to get you guys to calm down.
Yeah, well,
I'm just saying what the other theorist people say.
Well, then I would say then if you wrote that book, you need to follow your own moral code and stop abducting people against their free will.
There you go.
Because what you're doing then is not even following the natural law, and so therefore I would say that's a little bit of a problem. Mm-hmm. Because I think that, again, they are created creatures as we are created creatures. Something more powerful, something more greater has to exist other than them. And so that is the unmoved mover, which is God.
Right.
And so I think something more powerful certainly exists, far more greater than they.
Right, and if we're all evil ourselves, I mean, we do all these stupid things here. Maybe that's one of their stupid things. Hey, we're going to take over that planet. We're going to act as though we are the creators. They can do it just as well.
Here's the problem. A lot of people think that E.T., aliens E.T. is going to fly home and say, E.T. phone home.
I know.
We all think that perhaps maybe they mean us no harm. Well, maybe they do.
Yeah.
I'm just, again, we don't know the intention. But here's the problem. We don't know their intention, but what we do know is what they have allegedly done. Mm-hmm. And so therefore we can go by what they have already done allegedly to people. And so we can assume then that what they are doing is evil acts. So we can look at their intention and say, okay, we can begin to think to ourselves, remember, our acts are whether or not something is ethical, our acts are ethical, it can be found in the intent. So if you do something good for someone, it's good based on intent. So if you could do something good just to get something out of it. So you don't do something good because you want to do something good for someone. You want to do something good so you can get something back.
Right.
Well, that's not a good act. That's a selfish act.
Exactly.
So, but we know that what they are doing, their intent behind it is evil. Torturing people and doing terrible things is an evil act. And so therefore we can look at their intent and say, no, something's not right. And so we can go by what people have said that appear to be pretty legitimate individuals who claim to be abducted. And we can say, now, wait a minute, maybe their intent isn't really not that good. Maybe these creatures from outer space that's coming to visit us, maybe their intent is evil.
And if you have a comment on that, the number to call is 1-800-STRANGE. 1-800-STRANGE. We're going to be right back with Bishop James Long on High Strangeness. I'm Connie Willis. We're back on High Strangeness. Connie Willis here. We are along with Bishop James Long here. We've been talking about the perspective from the Bible and of God about aliens and ETs. And we're just talking about their intent, and that was concerning abductions and things like that. So, you know what? Next time, what I'd like to do, if you're willing to come back, is talk with an actual abductee that's open to talking about it.
Phenomenal.
And and also even possibly David Jacobs, if we could get him, who has done. He and Bud Hopkins, if you don't know their names, they have done probably the most hypnosis and regress these people to find out what's going on and, their findings. And just recently talked to David Jacobs, and his finding is it's not that nice of a thing. They're being taken, like you had said, and from their own will, even though there are people called experiencers that are pretty open to it, and they tend to think it's a higher consciousness and good things are going to come from it, where David Jacobs, who've done the research, has said, I don't see anywhere where there's anything good to come out of this, except what they want out of it, and that's like colonization down here after the end of all the hybrid program, I guess, is what they call it. So that would be very interesting to have you also talking with them and how they feel about that and what you can shoot back. Would you be open to that?
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah.
That would be excellent. Is there anything else you were thinking about to throw out?
Not that I follow. I respect the Vatican and many of those within it because, again, my experience within the seminary was wonderful. In the Roman seminary, I met some truly wonderful priests. But it's interesting that the Vatican recently said that it's okay for Catholics to believe in aliens. And I found that interesting.
Yes, I did too. To me, it was the next step to disclosure of the truth of it happening.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, there's a title called "The Extraterrestrial Is My Brother." The Reverend Jose Gabriel Funes said the expensiveness of the universe means that there could be life, of course, on other planets besides Earth. And so, of course, he's an astronomer. But my question is, the extraterrestrial is my brother. Well, I don't need a brother who's going to prod me against my free will.
And there's other people that say there's many species out there. Some are walking amongst us, and you wouldn't know the difference in that they, I don't know if they know they even have an intent or agenda, that they're just here. I mean, who knows? Definitely the abductions, that's a true intention, but whoever does know, human-wise, until they talk, until they disclose it, and if they do disclose it, we're not going to know those intentions, and we may never. What if these creatures or whatever they are, they're obviously not like us, so maybe their intention is to never let us know their intention. They might be acting as they're good guys, and then at one point pull the rug out from underneath us. Who knows? It's all interesting.
Yes.
It's all exciting, but it's good to hear that I'm not the devil, because I think this is possibly occurring all over the place.
Well, I'm going to be knocking on your door if the men in black come knock on mine. So I'm just
You're my true bodyguard. Actually, if there is a devil in me because of all this, you're right here with me. So can you look in my eyes and know? What do you think of, what's the guy's name? He goes and he actually does exorcisms all the time. You know who he is. I can tell you know immediately. Is he real or not real?
Let me just say this. I would never perform an exorcism on camera because it's not something that you do for show.
That's right. He was doing it on camera. Would you do it on camera for research?
Let me just say this to you. If you have a loved one who is truly possessed. Now, there's a difference between deliverance and possession.
And what is that difference?
Deliverance is a form of oppression. So if you have a demonic oppression, if you are oppressed, you're feeling the forms of oppression, you going in and out of oppression. You feel like there's a heaviness, a weightness. You're going in and out of consciousness at time. Those are forms of oppressiveness. Deliverance is praying over a person. When you're dealing with an exorcism, the solemn ritual of exorcism, that is a formal prayer. It's a formal ritual. That is very intense. And the person has no control over their body at all. The person is completely possessed by the demonic. The demonic has complete control of the body, not the soul, the body. And let me just say this. If your family member is truly possessed and have no control over their body, it would be immoral for me to put a camera in front of your loved one's face for the world to see, for the embarrassment of what your loved one is doing and has no control over their body just to get ratings. I think that is that's injustice.
Well, that goes back to
terrible.
intent at that point, doing it just for ratings.
Well, and not just that. It just is, where's the compassion in that? You don't put a camera in someone's face and say, okay, now act. I mean, if you have, there's no compassion. If your loved one is truly going in the state of possession, and I'm performing this ritual, and you're doing things to your body that are quite honestly embarrassing, that are terrible, and the camera is there to film and put it all over worldwide television, just so you can relive this every single day of your life when you're flipping through the channel. Where's the compassion in that?
Right.
There's no compassion.
If it was done for reasons to show other priests that feel called to doing that, if they could see and learn from that to go, this is what happens, this is what happens,
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a bystander during an exorcism. Bystanders don't exist.
It's
in
just
exorcism.
you and the other.
Well, every person who is present in the room must be actively engaged in prayer. There's no such thing as a bystander. So
gotcha.
every person who's present, everyone must be in prayer.
Wouldn't they be at risk anyway? That thing would jump right into the camera guy at that point.
The exorcist, everyone who's present is at
vulnerable,
risk.
right?
Everyone
Yeah.
is vulnerable.
Yeah.
But with the power of prayer and the power of God, I mean, you walk in knowing that the power of evil always fails. You have that faith. But at the same time, that's why there are no bystanders in an exorcism. There are no witnesses. There are no people sitting in the back saying, well, let me just take notes, because that person will absolutely be at a high risk of being attacked. Everyone present must be actively engaged in prayer. Furthermore, I won't allow bystanders. The people who are present during an exorcism are the exorcist.
This is real stuff. This is real.
This is real stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess you're right. When it is televised like that, it seems as though, anybody can do this.
Sure.
Anybody can walk in. You're right. This is a real thing. When you say that when someone is possessed and they're totally controlling them, does that are these people walking around still going to school, still going to work, and
Sure.
then it just kind of attacks them every now and then?
Yeah, there's a thing called transient possession and then perfect possession. Transient possession or full possession. Transient possession is when the person goes in and out of possession. Annalise McKell was in transient possession. There were times where she was actually in a possessed state, and then there were times where she was playing the piano and she was herself. A person is in a full possession is in a possessed state all the time. That person is in a very high risk of expiring because the demonic is in constant attack of the body. The person usually will die of malnutrition, dehydration, because the demonic will not allow the person to consume any type of substance of life like food or water. Annalise McKell died of malnutrition, dehydration. She was 68 pounds when she died.
Wow.
And so any substance, any drop of water, she'll get violently ill, or the person will become violently ill.
It takes away those desires.
Well, not the desires. It just their hunger. They can feel the hunger. They want to eat, and you try to feed them. They become violent. They regurgitate. They can't keep it down.
Well, what is their whole plan? Since the soul can live, why is it not working its hardest, or is it? And what is the goal of the demon? To bring you down?
Well, the goal of the demon is for the person to commit suicide.
Oh.
Keep in mind that possession...
Doesn't it also kill the demon?
Well, for a possession.
Okay.
For an exorcism.
Okay.
But when you're dealing with possession, it attacks your intellect and your will. Now that's the scholarly, that's the educated thing. However, I've added a third element because I think the third element needs to be in place, and that's faith. Because it attacks your element, it attacks your intellect, it attacks your will, and attacks your faith. Intellect, you begin to think you're going crazy. You begin to hear things. It begins to tell you that there's something wrong, that no one loves you, that you're mentally ill, that it begins to push you away from everyone. Your will, it attacks you on a psychological level, on a sexual nature. It attacks you on many different forms. That's your will. It begins to break you down. The faith, you begin to think, where's God? Where is he? Not only does it attack your faith, but it attacks the faith of those people around you. Because now your loved ones are saying, where is God in all this? Why isn't he helping? And so the person then gives up. I can't do this anymore. I stop. Possession takes place. Now, I personally believe, and let me say this very clearly for your listeners out there, I firmly reject 100% the idea or theological belief that people who commit suicide go to hell. I reject that the theological belief. To me, it is a terrible theological discourse. And the reason being is because we have a God who loves us more than we can possibly fathom. Imagine a person that you love in this world, whoever it is, you would give your life for. Your love for that person can't even compare, can't come close to the love that God has for you. Your love for the person that you have is a speck of dust in the universe compared to the love that God has for you. Therefore, if you commit suicide, you're not in the right state of mind. You're thinking irrationally. Do you honestly think that a God who loves you that much is going to turn you away when you're not thinking in the rational state of mind? Philosophically, it makes no sense. Logically, it makes no sense. Theologically, it makes no sense. Therefore, I reject the notion people who commit suicide go to hell.
And I was trying to get back to the other question. I love that you said that, because that's a question that just recently I knew some people were actually asking about that. And I was wondering about the thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
You're actually doing it to yourself at that point. What we were asking at that point to get where you went, but thank you very much for that,
Sure.
was the demon is trying to take you down.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But if you go down, doesn't the demon go down as well?
No,
or he
no.
just pops onto somebody else? Why is he here?
Because of the loathsome that he has, the hatred he has for humanity, or it has. Demonic entities that truly hate humans because we are created in the image of God. Remember, angels are here to serve us.
Yeah. Right.
We are created in the image of God. We are.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, but I always tell people that we have nothing to fear from demons. That I don't want people thinking that possession and that kind of stuff it's not rampant. Mm-hmm. It is rare. Possession does occur, but we have nothing to fear.
I don't know, the three things you listed, I think happens so often. My goodness, I see a lot of people like that. I'm like, whoa, everybody's possessed. I also, going back to high strangeness and that area, I do believe that there's some people that think they're experiencing what they might want to call an ET or alien, and it's really either ghost or maybe possibly demon. I don't know, but I just think some people do intermix those two every now and then, and but it's all related as we're all here together. But is there anything else you want to add?
No, I really appreciate the invitation to come out and chat with you and chat with your listeners.
Yeah, I'm so happy you came out. The next time I'm really gonna put something together so we can really get a lot deeper and see. I don't know if we'll come up with any answers, but at least we'll have fun doing it and educate each other on some things. So this is James Long, Bishop James Long. He said I could call him James if I wanted. So sorry if that comes out. You're listening to Connie Willis on High Strangeness. We'll be right back.